Exomologiste to Kyrio te agathos, alleluia.
Otis ton neona to eleos aftu, alleluia.
Any questions on the topic? Go on.
Send the Americans back to the States.
All right. Sensible questions.
No.
Right, what's your question?
The blasphemy laws. What about online? Because a lot of what goes on in the world
Yeah, good question.
is online.
Yep.
People's audience
Yes.
is on a network.
Yep.
So you could have a big audience. So you're saying public places are private, but what about in the privacy of your home? Because you're going out to the world.
Right. So if you're making a recording and that recording is being broadcast through the public infrastructure that is paid for by the state, then it would fall under blasphemy laws. But if you're making a recording because someone has engaged you in public debate and they're engaging you about Christianity, then the same law that would protect you in a public place would protect you online. In other words, if you're engaging in a debate with a Christian about Christianity, it would be a protection in law that you were being evangelized and therefore you were allowed to blaspheme in that context. But if you were making a film like The Life of Brian, or the Jerry Springer opera, that is gratuitously blasphemous, that would be a crime, that would be punished, and you wouldn't be allowed to broadcast that. You would come under the consequences of the blasphemy law. Do you want to respond to the question?
So you're just talking about online discourse, basically? Yeah. He doesn't seem to be against that. So I think online discourse would be allowed under his system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and is it just to the Christian religion, or what about the Muslim?
Let someone else ask a question, bro, and then we come back to you. Right. Any other questions?
Just because I'm not totally against the blasphemy law, but my question is, because throughout history Christians have never really agreed completely on a lot of issues. Say, for instance, okay, in London, you managed to approve of blasphemy law, but then amongst Christians, we're going to debate, aren't we? Like, say, for instance, we're going back to the example you were talking about the Eucharist. Maybe some Orthodox would say, yeah, that's completely, totally blasphemous. Or maybe some evangelicals would say, well, not really, no? How would you go about?
I would question vociferously the seriousness of any evangelical's faith who would be happy to see the Eucharistic bread and the Eucharistic wine being abused. And I would say that anyone who is okay with it being abused is kind of like a Christian who says that they're okay with gay marriage. It is a sacrament, and we shouldn't believe that our sacraments could be abused in that way, even if you don't believe in the real presence. Do you want to come back on that?
I mean, I think you're hitting on a point, like, where does the needle fall? And again, if we start giving people this power, it will be used against us, as it always is. This is what we're dealing with in America. A lot of leftists want to take away freedom of speech. They don't want us to criticize the LGBTQ agenda, because to them, that's violence. It's a blasphemy law to them.
Correct.
And
it is.
That is a problem, because again, if we start fighting over this power stuff, it's just it's a slippery slope into authoritarianism, where freedom of speech just goes out the window.
Any other questions, guys? Go on.
The blasphemy law extended to all religions.
Right.
So, Satanist, Muslim.
Yeah, I understand the question. No. A Christian blasphemy law would not be extended to protect other religions. Of course it wouldn't, because we don't believe those other religions are true. And so we wouldn't have a blasphemy law protecting the Quran from public desecration. We wouldn't have a blasphemy law that said that if you walked out with a candle from a fire Zoroastrian temple and then blew it out, that somehow you would be prosecuted. Or, no, it wouldn't. It would only apply to the Christian faith, because I'm a Christian, I'm not a universalist. Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, if I start to worry of us turning other people into second-class citizens. Because again, I just worry about when we start doing this, we have to figure out how to work with people in society. At the end of the day, the government has to recognize there are people that are citizens that are not going to be Christian. Are they going to be extended equal rights? Well, now we're starting to muddy the water there, and that could lead to some pretty terrifying consequences that we see in the Islamic world. I don't want to become the Christian Middle East over here, and so I worry about that kind of stuff. I think we're better than that. I think we can take. It's like Jesus. He could take it. He expects his father. He says they're going to persecute you, but take note, I've overcome the world. So I'm not worried about this kind of stuff because I know I'm part of the real kingdom where that's all going to be dealt with. I don't need to worry about it here on the earth.
Let me just respond to that argument, because there's a grotesque mischaracterization there. Islam has different laws for different people based upon valuing them differently. I would argue for a Christian blasphemy law that would apply equally to Christians as it would to anyone else. I'm not talking about treating people as different kinds of citizens under different laws. I'm saying that if you're a Christian and you blaspheme, you receive exactly the same punishment as an atheist who blasphemes or as a Muslim who blasphemes. So this understanding is to misunderstand the argument. I believe in equality under the law, and a Christian blasphemy law would fall just as hard on a Christian blasphemer as it would on a non-Christian blasphemer. They would be equal under the law.
To be clear, I wasn't accusing you of that. I'm just saying that, like, when you put that into law, it can lead to that second-class stuff. There's a slippery slope is what I was talking about.
Well, I mean, but as Christians, we're committed to equality under the law. So there's the...
Hopefully.
Yeah. Go on. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, you spoke about like equality. I just wanted to ask, in the Old Testament, right, do you agree that Israelites are treated better than non-Israelites? For instance, when it comes to slavery, God says, you shall not treat your Israelite, your fellow brother, as such and such. But when it comes to somebody who's not an Israelite, you can treat him harshly. And I can pull out the references if you like. So I don't see an equality there when it comes to how to treat a slave, whether he's an Israelite or a non-Israelite.
Yeah, so firstly, I would, if you're going to condemn that, if you're going to, right, and I suspect the reason why you won't condemn that is because under Islamic law, Muslims follow that principle. Islamic law believes that there are degradations of humanity and that we treat different kinds of humans differently. So women get treated less than, Muslim women get treated less than Muslim men, and Christians and Jews get treated less than Muslims, and then pagans get treated less than Christians and Jews, and so on and so forth. Now, the reason I would suggest, and Michael might have his own answers, the reason why I would suggest that God permitted such things is because of the hardness of the hearts of the Israelites.
Right.
Because they were savages. And savages did not have the gumption, the nuance, the ability to treat people equally under the law. It is not a step forward to celebrate that. Christ comes to set the captives free. That's what he says in the Gospel of Luke. That means that Christ is abolishing slavery. He's moving us out of the slave trade and the slave mindset. Islam is backwards by comparison to the new covenant. But it's even, and it's only comparable to the old covenant in some places. In some places, it's backwards to the old covenant as well, ladies and gentlemen. So my answer to the brother is, it was to do with the hardness of the hearts of the Israelites. They were savages. The new covenant calls us to something better, and that means it calls us to something better than the old covenant and Islam. Well, how would you like to reply?
No, yeah, slavery was a concession, not a promotion.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions?
I can actually show.
Yeah. So it would depend on the nature of the blasphemy and the gratuitousness of the blasphemy. So, sorry?
Let me give you an example. If somebody said Jesus is false, what would be the charge? What would be the punishment?
You'd probably just get a citation and a warning from a police officer.
What about if somebody burned the Bible?
You'd probably get a hefty fine.
What about if somebody went into a church and smashed it up?
You'd get thrown in prison. years.
Well, that's violent. That's destruction of property.
Again, if that went back to state, they could play with the numbers. I think.
So you think Christians should tolerate people smashing up our churches?
No.
Do you think we should tolerate people burning our Bibles?
Back to your previous statement and say what X, Y, and Z said. If somebody defames Jesus in front of you, act there and then.
Right. Well, I wouldn't encourage breaking the law. I would encourage changing the law so that we can punish people who blaspheme. But I'm glad that you agree we should stand against blasphemy. No, wait, Michael, do you want to respond to that? Okay.
Who decides blasphemy laws? Because I see a lot of Christians in there saying that's blasphemy to the fellow Christian.
The right ones.
Right. So the question is, whilst on the edges of this blasphemy debate, there are some arguments. Like, for instance, if you insulted the Virgin Mary, would it be blasphemous or not? Right? Christians are going to debate that. But no Christian would debate that you can blaspheme against Christ. Right? And so where the blasphemy law should be is where all Christians agree. So blasphemy against the Trinity, blasphemy against Christ, blasphemy against the Holy Spirit, blasphemy against the Father, desecration of the Eucharist. You know,
When certain Christians are saying Jesus is the Father, is that not blasphemy?
I would say if they're teaching that, it's erroneous teaching. It depends again how they're saying it. If they're doing it in a flippant, mocking way, then yeah, it could move into blasphemy. And the point is, I'm not saying that there isn't a debate about where the law of a blasphemy law should be. The debate between me and Michael is whether there should be a blasphemy law at all. I agree with you, there is a debate about where that line of blasphemy should be, what the punishment should be. The debate I'm having with Michael is whether we should have a blasphemy law, right? And I agree there's a debate about what constitutes blasphemy, but that's secondary to the argument about whether there should be a blasphemy law. It's not an argument against a blasphemy law.